Hey, how's it going everybody? It's your boy, and today I'm going to make a video that I've been wanting to make for a while. It's an idea that came in my head the past couple of months, and I wanted to revisit an old video I made on the old channel way back in 2016? Yeah, 2016, when Brexit was coming around and we were going to decide the future of the country. And in that video, I stated that I would abstain from the vote. I'd abstain, I would not vote either way, because one, didn't really make my mind up. Two, I couldn't really see the benefits of either side yet. And third, I just didn't trust the government, I didn't trust the country to be able to pull off either. Because on the one hand, it's staying in the EU is basically staying on a ship that's going to sink. But then, on the other hand, from my perspective at the time, Brexit looked like another ship that was going to sink as well, or at least had the potential to sink, and I didn't really know which risk I wanted to take. Now, I'm going to discuss really what I got right and what I got wrong and what I've seen since and how I would have voted if I had made my mind up. So the first thing is, what did I get right? Well, it's a very vague thing to say. It's kind of almost, I wouldn't say a cop-out, but basically in the video, I kind of vaguely said that, look, we're going to fuck this up. I don't know how we're going to fuck this up. I don't know why we're going to fuck it up, but we're going to fuck up. Something's going to fuck up, something's going to go wrong, and it's going to take ages, potentially. I don't know exactly what I said. It's been a long time. And well, I was right, but I guess if you say something so vague, yeah, of course, you're going to be right. Yeah. It's happened. The negotiations have gone to shit. Theresa May does not look as strong as she looked at the time. In fact, she's quite a terrible negotiator. In fact, she's divided her party over it, and really, it's not going too well. In fact, it's not going so well that potentially we might not even leave. Now, apparently, there's a good chance we will leave in 2019, and all we need to do is sort out a deal, if we even need a deal. But it's pretty clear from what I've seen that the EU want no other deal than everything their way. They won't compromise. There is no compromise to be had with them. And right now, Theresa May is demanding respect after the Chequers deal, the terrible Chequers deal that even her own country does not like. She's now demanding respect from the EU. She's not in a position to demand respect because she came from a position of weakness that she put herself in because she's not very good at what she's meant to be doing. I think that's pretty clear. Now, another thing that I said was, I think I may have said that potentially the European Union will need reform. I think a lot of people who voted Remain, who slightly veered Brexit but weren't, also said that we need to reform it. Well, I was wrong on that. It's pretty clear that the EU does not want to reform, instead it wants to double down. And it's pretty clear it's perfectly happy with doing what it's doing until it inevitably collapses. And that's exactly what happened to the Western Roman Empire, funnily enough. They just became complacent, arrogant. I mean, there were other issues as well, to the point that they essentially withered into nothing. In the end, they kind of collapsed almost peacefully. The Ostrogoths simply just walked into Italy and Odoacer declared himself king, and that's it. Done. Deposed the boy king. I don't think he even killed him, he just deposed him, and that was that. And I really do see the parallels between the decline and fall of the Western Roman Empire and also this decline of the EU. Now, unfortunately for the EU, they don't have the unifying force that the Western Roman Empire had, which was Roman culture, Roman ways of life, even though that was fastly declining itself. And due to the terrible condition of the empire, infrastructurally and everything, those regions that were once one were now becoming separate, which was why the language was changing, why languages were forming. The EU doesn't have that, sadly. They don't have something like that, which could have potentially have salvaged the empire. No, this is a disparate group of countries that have different wants and different needs that have come together, and they're now part of this currency union which is deficient and not working very well. One of the best things the Labour government did in the early 2000s was not join the euro. Good old Gordon Brown, I guess. He was right. They don't have that. They don't have that unifying sense that the Western Roman Empire initially had. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, so I was wrong on that. There is no reform to be had. The only option is stay and do what they say, or you leave. That's what they've been saying, not us. Or rather, they wouldn't want us to leave, though, because it's pretty clear that Hungary now, Poland and Bulgaria, and all these other Eastern European countries are now dealing with the same problems that we had. Another thing, and I guess this is away from the video now, is the responses of the two sides. Now, it's pretty clear that, for one thing, the Remainers have become incredibly arrogant, incredibly nasty, and vitriolic, which is ironic, considering that's what they like to label as Brexit is. They refuse to admit defeat and just get along with trying to make good of this situation that they found themselves in. Some of them do, obviously. Some of them have come out and said that. Others have, in fact, since Article 13, since Article 11, have switched. They've decided, yeah, we don't want to be Remainers anymore. We now see the EU for what it is. But you could just see that these people, they're so middle class, that they're just so out of touch with reality. And very much like the EU, they're not open to compromise. They seem to think that we've made this big mistake and that we're going to lose out not just economically and financially, but our culture is going to become fascist and racist. This is the reason why Brexit happened, even though, yeah, nationalism was kind of a thing in regards to border control, but that's really it. It was to do with border control and sovereignty, not to do with hating other people. That's what I've managed to glean from most people who voted Brexit. Maybe there were that jingoistic few, but what's the difference between them and this blind love of Europe and the European project and this globalist type thing? I don't know. To me, it's just two forms of nationalism. One is internationalism, and the other is simply just, well, nationalism, regionalism, I guess one could say. I really don't see much of a difference, and I really don't see how one is better than the other or worse than the other. And the thing is, they just lie. They just continually lie about the other side. They continually call these people out for being racists and misogynists when they themselves are that. Why do you think this whole gammon thing exists? Why is it that these people will condemn racism and call all these working class movements, because it is a class divide, the class divide is well and truly still alive in this country, it seems. Why would they go out and call all these different groups that supported Brexit as racist and stuff when they're calling them gammon, which is a slur for white people, from what I can gather, because, one, I guess white people go red in the sun? Is that what it is? I don't know why they call them gammon, but that is clearly a slur, and they're using it predominantly at white working class people. I guess they just can't call them chavs anymore since Owen Jones released that book years ago. God, he's sold out, hasn't he? But just look at it, and I'll probably make a video on this, just look at the protests that you've seen, or the marches. Look at the two sides. On the one side, who are going out against radical Islam and the EU, things like that. The anti-side, it's mostly working class people. And when you look at the Remainers, or you look at the quote-unquote anti-racism people, it's mostly middle class people. It's interesting, it's something worthy of making a video on, but it's pretty clear that these people are going for a system which doesn't really directly affect them socially, like the displacement of all these people due to the wars in the Middle East and the settlement of them in other places doesn't really affect them. It affects people at the bottom, and it's pretty clear that they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, most of them. It's a sense of altruism, and I can only respect that to some extent, but then you have to be realistic. The issues that these Brexiteers, these working class people raise up are not something that the middle class people will have first-hand experience in, nor will they be able to empathise with that either, which is why there's such a disconnect, because the two sides have radically different experiences with the people and the systems that they are protesting about. And it's pretty clear that to some extent one side does not really get the other, but I can definitely see the Remainers do not want to talk with these people. They do not want to even understand their point of view. It's just middle class cultural values or none whatsoever. It's not really changed, and you can see a similar thing from the upper classes as well. It depends on what side you're on, but I've even seen people like Master Brew go out against these working class activists, and I can't help but wonder, I don't know if you're just engaging in class warfare, and I like his content by the way, but I don't know where he stands. He's anti-EU, fair enough, but he's only anti-EU for his class. Now, I don't know if he's a middle class person or an upper class person, but he's certainly not working class, and if he is working class, he's kind of like keeping up appearances. He pretends to be richer than he actually is, or wishes he was. And those types of people are just as bad as the middle class Remainers, toffs, as that's what we call them over here. Anyway, there's that. Now, how would I have voted? Well, I probably would have voted leave, to be honest. I would have voted leave. I've changed my opinion, things have moved on, and I've been seeing more things, and I've realised, yeah, there's no way you really can stay, there's no third option, there's no reform, there's no nothing, and ultimately, this could end up being the best choice, in my opinion. But even then, even if I chose to abstain forever and ever, let's make the best of the situation anyway. Let's just work together, like, come on, the democratic decision has been reached, let's just get on with it, let's just work together, like, we know it's not going to be a good couple of years after that, we know that, but let's just try and make them bearable. Let's try and make them not as bad as they could be. I think the EU actually would like us to be fighting each other because it breeds resentment and division. And a people divided aren't as good as a people united. That's my opinion anyway. I think we all need to work together. We need to put aside our differences, class-wise, race-wise, gender-wise, whatever. Even though it has something to do with gender, but I thought I'd put that in there anyway. Let's just get down and just build. Let's just see what we can do. And another thing that I don't like is this campaign for a second referendum. And I was reading in the BBC, Nick Clegg saying that he told Cameron that the referendum is a stupid idea. Because, of course, he thinks it's a stupid idea. The man's not for democracy. None of these people are democratic. democratic. They claim to be democratic. The EU claims to be democratic, which is why they're attacking Hungary for doing their democratic things, because they're not democratic. These people don't like the people having a voice, because if the people have the voice and they express this voice, they're always going to vote differently than what they actually want them to, because it doesn't align with their interests, their corporate interests. And the people advocating for a second referendum are playing into that. They don't understand this. Look, the people have spoken. You can think that these people are ignorant and not very educated. Fair enough. But some of you come across that way too. Some of you are like that. Some of you blindly follow the others in your camp and believe everything they say. You don't think about that critically either. You're all victims of that. And if you really do respect democracy, if you really value democracy, then why are you trying to advocate for a second referendum? You don't actually believe in democracy. You actually don't respect democracy. You only respect democracy when it agrees with you. And it's the same with the SNP with their referendum for independence. The Scottish people voted no. And they knew full well what was coming around the corner. I'm pretty sure that the Brexit referendum was also agreed upon at roughly the same time. We knew this was coming up. The Scottish people knew. So if they wanted to stay in the EU, then they probably should have voted yes. But no, they voted no, knowing full well the consequences of this action. And yet the SNP and the Scottish nationalists, apart from people like Dankula, I don't know why he's a nationalist still, but it's beyond me, and the people have spoken on both issues, and you have to respect that, or just shut up. I'm sorry, like, if you can't respect that, and all you can do is moan about it, and try to disrespect democracy and undermine democracy in this country, shut up, we don't need you. Or you can just leave, go to another country, learn a new language, and live in that place that you so value, if you really want to. Put your money where your mouth is. And speaking of putting your money where your mouth is, I'd like to just talk about the Eastern European countries that are currently rebelling in the EU, and also Italy as well, and I guess you could argue Greece to some extent. These countries, I can't help but feel they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want the freedom that potentially our country could have without being in the EU, like Norway has to some extent, and Switzerland, but then they also want the benefits. They want the trade, they want the financial benefits, but you kind of can't have both, sadly, especially in the current structure of the EU and the way it's handled and the way it's run. You just can't. So when I saw Orban trying to defend his country, even though it was a good speech, it was like, well, what do you expect? This is the place that you guys agreed to move into. You can't have it both ways. And, I see him getting a lot of respect, and I see these countries getting a lot of respect from, especially Americans, for standing up to these people. It's like, they're not putting their money where their mouth is. They're rebelling, but ultimately, they're not doing anything. They won't change anything. They're not strong enough. They won't change the system. I don't think they even want to change the system, pretty much. They just want the best of both worlds, but they can't, because the union is moving ever closer to centralisation. And the closer they become to a centralised unit with this army, Hungary's not going to be able to exercise as much sovereignty as it thinks it can. So, as some people have said, join our camp. I won't have this whole, Hungary's great, Poland's great, Bulgaria's great, because, well, ultimately they didn't make the push that they need to in order to really be great. I know that's a bit of a tangent, guys, but there we go. I thought I would just run down the clock a bit, get some of my thoughts out there about the whole situation. But the thing is, and there's another tangent, where does the EU go from there? If all these countries leave, but it still remains a unit, what happens to France and Germany and Luxembourg and Belgium and all the other countries that still remain, and the European Union is formed? What happens? How do they expand? Where can they go? I'm going to make a slight prediction here, but I think it's not fully going to collapse. It will probably, at some point, form itself into what it wants to be. Probably. It will be smaller than it initially hoped, because, again, Britain's leaving, potentially Italy might leave, maybe other southern Mediterranean and Eastern European countries might leave, but it will still be around. It will just be slightly bigger than it was when it first was founded in the 1950s, and then potentially when it becomes this country, there will be a lot of internal and external problems and tensions. If they feel like they still want to expand their interests and their borders and incorporate new countries, they might find that doing it peacefully might not work, and we might end up seeing a new war. That's only the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is it goes the way of the Western Roman Empire and simply vanishes. It doesn't go out with a bang, it goes out with a whimper, as if it was never there to begin with. But I think the Western Roman Empire example is going to happen. Instead, we'll see Europe divide into power blocks. How and why, I don't know. I don't know what form it's going to take. I don't know if the Western countries will form a block, or the Eastern European ones will form a block, and the Central ones, or Germany has like a Fourth Reich kind of thing in conjunction with France, where they have their satellite vassal states, as Dick Hexenhammer has said. I don't know. Or maybe the United Kingdom becomes isolated from Europe in the sense of politically, but economically not so much. Kind of like in the 19th century, where we would trade with all these countries, but unless it directly affected us, we didn't interfere politically at all. Maybe we'll start seeing Britain get closer to the Commonwealth and build constructive and productive trade relations and social relations with these countries. And that's not just the English-speaking ones, although they all speak English, but maybe the ones in Africa and Asia. Get closer to them, because we've lost contact in many ways recently. And America will probably benefit from a potential loss of the EU, because that's one big trade block gone. That's more competition lost. So they can probably concentrate more on China. But anyway, I'm going to stop with this and just leave it there. Those are my new predictions. Those are my thoughts. And yeah, I guess I was kind of wrong in that video, but right on other things. I can barely watch it now. I could only go through so much of it. I thought I was quite boring in that video, actually. I think I've improved in the last 2 years, thankfully. At least I would hope so. But anyway, till next time, it's been your boy, and I'll see you later.